Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, the war in Iran is now escalating. There is no question. Last night was the 9th consecutive night in a row in which the United States pounded Iranian targets all across that entire country, not just along the Strait of Hormuz, but now in northern Iran, in western Iran. They're hitting targets everywhere they can hit them, including bridges. These are bridges that have dual use. They are primarily used by the Iranian military to ship in weapons across the country, drones, soldiers. They are now getting pounded, but now we risk a return to all-out war over what happened over the weekend. And let me tell you exactly now what took place. Apparently, the Iranian missiles and drones, FAQ, Muwafaq Salti Air Base. They conducted multiple missile strikes. That is where many U.S. forces are located in the country of Jordan. 2 service members have been killed. 2 Americans are dead. A third is presumed dead. He's considered missing, or she's considered missing. However, they have found the remains of a body. They are now doing an examination, and they believe that is the third missing service member. Furthermore, in northern Iraq, Iran launched more drone strikes. A downed drone was being detonated in a controlled detonation by a U.S. soldier. Something went wrong. That American soldier was killed, and one of the people helping him was badly injured. It appears now that Iran has a strategy, and essentially this is now their strategy. It is now to hit American targets across the entire region. Now, they hit Iraq. They hit Jordan in particular. A lot of U.S. service members are now in Jordan. Jordan is nominally an ally of the United States, and they believe that by expanding this war, by hitting other countries and having them pay a dear, dear price for being allied to the United States, that they will start to pull away from us. We will no longer have access to their bases, and it will make it more difficult for us to launch either air or missile strikes against Iran and the regime. Furthermore, the Iranian Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, came out and issued a statement. He now says Iran is engaged in a holy war against the United States, Israel, and any other country that aids the great Satan and the little Satan, as they call us. And he says now it is a test of wills, between Iran and the United States over who will control the strategic Strait of Hormuz and who ultimately will blink as the war escalates and escalates and escalates. And the Supreme Leader has now told the people of Iran that President Trump, according to him, does not have the stomach for a return to an all-out war, that the American people, led by the Democrats, do not have the stomach for American casualties and American deaths. And so they are launching drone strikes, missile strikes. As I said, 3 Americans, 2 are confirmed dead. A third is likely dead in Jordan. Several others were maimed or injured. But it is not just Jordan that they're hitting, and it's not just Iraq. They are also hitting key targets and U.S. bases in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in the United Arab Emirates, and to the point now that they are hitting airports. They are hitting desalination plants. In Kuwait, they hit a desalination plants, which is threatening the water supply for many people in Kuwait. Now, what I told Grace last night is what I'm going to say to all of you now. First of all, these attacks are acts of aggression, not just against the United States. Let that go for a second, because technically you could say, well, we're at war. So, yeah, they're going to fire on our bases if we're going to fire on Iran and their military targets and military bases. But this is an act of war against Jordan, against Kuwait, against Saudi Arabia, against Bahrain, against Qatar, against Oman, against Iraq. These are missiles and drones that are violating their sovereignty, and they're not just hitting U.S. bases. They are hitting clearly now civilian areas, civilian targets. Civilians are dying. When you start trying to take out the water supply, that's going to lead to people having no water in Kuwait. When you start blowing up their airports, when you start hitting their residential areas and killing people in their apartments, that's an act of war against those countries. That's an act of aggression. Now, the question, and by the way, and I think what Iran now has to ask themselves is this: do unto others as you would have done unto you. If you're going to start taking out airports and desalination plants, well, we could take out desalination plants in Iran. And that means millions of people are going to go without water. Is that what they want? Do they want every bridge now to be obliterated and demolished and smashed? Do they want us now to take out their entire industrial capacity and industrial base? Do they want their power grid to be blown to pieces, their power plants smashed, and the lights go off in Tehran? And if the lights go off, it's not just an inconvenience. There's no running water, there's no toilet, there's no heat, there's no AC, there's no ability to function as a country or as a society. So this war now is starting to spiral into a return to an all-out war. Now, President Trump promised, in fact, he vowed it, Rubio vowed it, and Defense Secretary or Secretary of War Pete Hegseth vowed that if a single American was killed in these retaliatory strikes by Iran, it would mean a return to an absolute all-out war. All eyes now are on President Trump. Will he now declare an all-out war and resume to the massive, almost unlimited bombing missile campaign that we saw during Operation Epic Fury? That is now the question. And the second question that needs to be asked, and this is not just being asked by the Kuhner man, it's being asked by by other close supporters, staunch supporters of the president. Listen now to Maria Bartiromo on Fox, asking what many of his closest supporters, as I said, like myself, are asking. Roll cut 5, Mike.
You know, CENTCOM says that there will be outsized action in retaliation, but I don't understand how it's possible that Iran has the capabilities to fight this way and continue to try to lash out at Gulf countries and U.S. military bases, because the U.S. has obliterated Iran's military, and the president continues to reiterate that.
That's a great question. That's exactly what I told Grace last night. I go, for me, the question is this, and by the way, it breaks my heart that we lost these service members. It's truly heartbreaking. It really is. How is this happening? How is this happening? If the U.S. Navy is at the bottom of the sea, and I'm not saying Trump is lying. He's not. I know he's not lying. Or the Pentagon is lying. I know they're not lying. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, what's going on? If the U.S. Navy is sunk at the bottom of the sea, okay? And if their air force has been completely annihilated and wiped out, and if their air defense systems have been smashed, and if we have destroyed their capacity to build missiles and drones, and if their military has been thoroughly and totally degraded, wiped out, and defeated, how are they still able to launch missile after missile, drone after drone, not just at U.S. warships, but at U.S. bases and at Persian Gulf countries, almost at will, to the point now that they're killing American soldiers? Okay, my friends, let me just give you a little bit more breaking news, and I want to go right to the phone lines, 617-266-6868. The question before the great audience of Kuhner Country, before the House, as they say, is, should the United States now return to all-out war against Iran, as President Trump promised he would, should Iranian forces kill U.S. service members? Over the weekend, Iran followed through on their threat, saying that we will feel now the pain of this war, that the end of the ceasefire is going to mean more American casualties. And so they have struck at Jordan in particular, a top military base that hosts U.S. forces. 2 U.S. service members were killed in an Iranian missile strike. A third is presumed dead. The body is missing. They have the remains, and they believe that is the third missing service member. Furthermore, there was another death of a U.S. service member following an Iranian attack in northern Iraq. So, Americans now, it's the deadliest weekend for American forces since the ceasefire, since the first phase of Operation Epic Fury ended. And so we have at least 4 dead and maybe more to come. Trump is now vowing to massively escalate the airstrikes and the missile strikes, saying that Iran now is going to be punished, and punished dearly, for what they have done in killing those service members. However, he did vow potentially a return to all-out war, meaning we're back at Operation Epic Fury, and that he would even expand the air operations, the missile operations, to now go after civilian infrastructure, the way Iran is now targeting civilian infrastructure across the entire Persian Gulf, attacking all kinds of neighboring countries. Trump now says, 2 can play at that game. We'll blow up all your bridges. We'll blow up your power plants. You want to hit desalination plants? We can hit desalination plants. In other words, he wants now to hit the regime at its very core. So, in the wake of all this, clearly escalation. It's a spiral back towards war, all-out war. The United States, here's breaking news, is now sending massive amounts of F-16 jet fighters from our military base in Germany. They are now being sent to the Middle East. They're not telling us where quite exactly. They're also now sending in an armada, just a ton of stealth F-35 jet fighters from our base in England. Most experts believe that these F-16s, F-35s that are now going to be reinforcing U.S. forces are probably going to be stationed either in Jordan or in Israel. And in other words, if that is the case, then get ready, because we're on the verge of round-the-clock bombing of Iran. We are also now sending refueling tankers. So apparently now we're going to be refueling fighter jets. We're going to be refueling our Navy ships. So it looks like Trump now has made a decision. We're not going to talk. That's over. It's going to be war, war, war. And now the only issue is, do we resume all-out war, Or are we going to continue now to do these sort of strikes for 3, 4, 5 hours every night? You take out maybe 20, 25, 30, 40 targets. Iran then does sort of a tit for tat. They can't do as much damage to us or to our allies as we can do to them, but they launch a barrage of missiles. They launch a few drone attacks. They destroy an oil refinery. They blow up an airport. They hit a U.S. military base. They kill a couple soldiers or wound a couple soldiers, and they just start bleeding us in the Middle East. And slowly but surely, they start to turn the entire regional economy into a shambles. That's clearly now their strategy. Fight, absorb punishment, deliver some blows, and wait till November, until the Democrats will ride to the rescue. And so, my question to you, what should the United States do now? Pete Hegseth has come out, Secretary of War, and he has now said that the death of these U.S. soldiers in Jordan over the weekend, his words, not mine, have only, quote, stiffened our resolve, unquote. And he's now urging the president to unleash an even more punishing air and missile campaign. Apparently, privately, he told the president, if Iran wants a war, well, then let's give them a war. So this is where we currently stand right now. Now, as for the ultimate question that Maria Bartiromo asked, many Trump supporters like myself are asking, if Iran is militarily as degraded and defeated as we have been told by the president, by the Defense Department, by the Pentagon, how can they continue to keep launching missiles and drone attacks, killing our soldiers, and doing serious damage to these Persian Gulf countries, many of whom are our allies, and depend upon our protection? And I think, to me, the answer is quite obvious. The ceasefire, which went on for months and months, gave Iran, or the regime, the breathing space, the time they needed to start to reconstitute their missile and drone program. And so that crucial 2 months or whatever it was, where we were just negotiating and they were stalling us, clearly what Iran did is they used that time to restock their missiles. And again, silly me, forgive me. No, it's not the U.S. Navy at the bottom of the sea. It's the Iranian Navy, obviously at the bottom of the sea. 6:31 now on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. So let me just quickly reset, and I want to go right. The lines are jammed. 617-266-6868 is the number. If the Iranian Navy is at the bottom of the sea, if the Iranian Air Force has been wiped out, if the Iranian air defenses have been smashed and obliterated, if the Iranian missile production and missile storages and drone storage units have been demolished, if their military has been severely degraded, how the hell then is the regime able to launch missile and drone attacks targeting U.S. bases, whether it be in Bahrain, in Kuwait, in Iraq, the big one obviously in Jordan, in which 2 service members were killed, a third likely killed as well, and another service member died in northern Iraq, and they're able now to pound, whether it be Kuwait or Saudi Arabia or Oman or Bahrain. They are hitting oil refineries, they are hitting airports, they are hitting bridges, they are hitting power plants, they are hitting desalination plants, they are hitting residential areas to sow terror and death. They are pounding many of these countries surrounding Iran that are allies, Persian Gulf countries at will. Now, it's nowhere near the equivalent of the beating that we're giving them, no question. We are hitting them 10 times as hard as they've hit us and hit our allies. But the fact of the matter is, how are they still firing these missiles and these drones? And now with these service members dead, is it time now for President Trump to go for the jugular, to go for their throat and unleash, rain hell on Iran and the regime? 617-266-6868. And let me throw this other log on the fire, because this is clearly part of their thinking. During the Vietnam War, it was later revealed, top leaders in the Communist Party in North Vietnam said, openly bragged in a memoir, that their greatest asset was the anti-war movement in the United States. And they said, we felt that if we could just hang on and hang on and hang on, that the anti-war movement would bring America down from within, that they would force them to withdraw U.S. forces, and that's how we would win the war. It appears now that Iran is taking the exact same strategy, the leadership. They are working, colluding with the Democrats, and their strategy appears to be, let's fight, let's keep testing Trump's will, see if he has the stomach for an all-out war, but let's keep sending American boys home in body bags. It could only be one at a time or two at a time, but eventually the Democrats and the media will pounce and seize on it. It will weaken public opinion in favor of the war even more. And the Democrats will use this, the anti-war movement will use this to eventually punish Trump or hurt Trump at the ballot box in November. And then when the Democrats sweep back to power, they can hand Iran the mother of all victories. So, is the Iran strategy of slowly bleeding the United States in the hopes that this will affect domestic public opinion and strengthen the Democrats here at home? Is it a viable strategy, a winning strategy, a strategy that may eventually prevail? I hope not. I pray not. But it's clear this is Iran's strategy. Agree, disagree, and if it is, what do we need to do to defeat it? 617-266-6868. Mark in Medford. You're going to kick us off, Mark. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. Happy Monday to you, my friend.
Happy Monday to you, my friend.
So, you know something? I was going to ask the same question Maria Bonaromo asked. If we wiped everything out, and Jeff, I'm going to be honest with you, the ceasefire wasn't that long for them to replenish almost everything they used and everything they lost. Somebody is helping this country, Jeff. I don't give a rat's ass what they say. I don't care what China says. I don't care what Russia says or anything. Somebody is helping this country, Jeff, and we need to find out who it is.
Mark, what do you say? I think you're right, by the way. But let me just ask you this. Let me just play devil's advocate. What do you say to the argument that we really didn't destroy? Yes, we destroyed some of their storages where they were holding these missiles or drones, but what's called their industrial base, their industrial capacity, the factories, you know, the armaments, where they can continue to churn out missiles and drones. And so once we hit a ceasefire, they can just crank up these factories, have them work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and before you know it, they've got thousands of missiles and thousands of drones, and now they're dropping them everywhere. What do you say to that argument?
The only way you can get a true assessment is to have boots on the ground. Without boots on the ground, Jeff, how do we know what we destroyed and what we didn't destroy? And another thing, Jeff, I want to talk, you know, Iran is starting to bomb these other Middle Eastern countries, but yet the United States is the only one bombing back. Now, I know we have military bases in other Middle Eastern countries, okay? But for Christ's sakes, Jeff, you're getting bombed. Your civilian infrastructure is getting bombed, and you're just sitting there letting Iran do it while the United States does all the retaliation. Screw you. Start fighting back. These other countries need to start fighting back. Or you know what, Jeff? Maybe it is time to pull all our military bases out of the Middle East, all our troops out of the Middle East, and stop policing them, because it's not our friggin' job.
Interesting. Wow, Mark, you're a big supporter of the war. I mean, Mark, right, correct. You were a big supporter of the war, correct?
Well, I wasn't at first, Steph, because, you know, I don't want this to turn into World War III, for Christ's sakes. But you know what, Jeff? Why are we always the one responding? These other countries are now getting bombed by Iran, and they're not hitting back. We're the only ones that are hitting back. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, listen, it's like you're a brother from another mother. I'm like, are you, Mark, are you CIA, or like, are you listening in on my conversations in the living room with my wife? Because that's literally what Grace and I, in fact, what I was telling her. I said, so, and by the way, I mean, I don't want to pile on, but you're right, Mark. You know how much economic aid we give to Jordan? How much economic aid we give to so many of these countries in the Persian Gulf? And we protect them, their whole security, their military, everything. I mean, we've done so much for them. And, you know, they're the ones getting bombed. Their civilians are getting bombed. Their bridges are getting bombed. Their water plants, for God's sake, their airports are getting bombed. And they just, like, look to us, like, okay, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You've just been bombed. What are you going to do? So I'm with you all the way, Mark. Mark, as always, thank you so much for that call. Look, I know it's easier said than done, obviously, but Trump's got to, Saudi Arabia, where's your Air Force? Kuwait, where's your Air Force? Jordan, I know you don't have much of a military, but, could you give us something? To me, I would unleash Israel. To me, that's, you got a pit bull there that can rip the guts out of them. Why are we holding back Netanyahu and Israel right now is beyond me. I would be like, no, we started bombing together. Let's resume bombing together. So I would get these regional countries involved, and I would get Israel, and I would say, guys, together we are going to hit them so hard they'll remember it for 1,000 years. But that's me. Now, let me just play again devil's advocate. What if the bombing wasn't quite as effective as we thought it was? Because, Mark makes a really, really good point. I know we have satellites. I get it. So, and I know Mossad has agents on the ground. I get that. But we don't have boots on the ground ourselves. And the Iranian regime has destroyed or, imprisoned, jailed, and tortured many of the anti-regime groups that were working with us. So they're not able to really feed us information. So, maybe we thought we had hurt them much more than we actually did. Or maybe China and Russia, the Chinese are playing a double game. 617-266-6868. Dave, our Western PA constitutionalist correspondent out in the Pittsburgh area, how are you?
Hey, Jeff. Good morning, buddy. What's going on?
Had a good weekend. How about you, my friend?
Good. It was all right. We had that Canadian smoke from, well, I'm not making fun of you, Jeff, but your former country. Hey, Jeff, here's what I think happened. We won 4 gold medals against the country that invented the game. We kicked their ass. Now they blow smoke. So they blew their stack, Jeff. What can you say? Jeff, real quick, I'm going to tell you right now what we need to do. I don't know how many Moabs we got, the 25,000 pound bombs. We need to drop one in the IRC and make a crater where it once stood. and make a political cartoon out of it. Like, just, I don't know if we can waste the Moab. I know we should be getting that mountain there where all the nuke stuff is.
Yeah, Pickaxe
Mountain,
yeah, it's called Pickaxe
last
Mountain.
Week.
Yeah, Pickaxe Mountain, Dave.
So we need to make that like a manhole. We could put a manhole cover on it, Jeff. A giant manhole cover. It'll look like Superdome in New Orleans. So, but yeah, that's what we should do, Jeff. If we can waste the Moab, I'm sure they're expensive, and the jobs they create to make those. Drop a Moab on the IRGC. They'll wish. Hey, Jeff, war is mental. Like I called a couple calls ago, I mentioned war is mental, and then physical. The other part. Jeff, let's use the great Satan thing to our advantage. If they think we're the devil, and we'll beat the devil out of them, literally speaking. Marines are called devil dogs, Jeff, and it's the word Marine. Why don't we just use that to our advantage? If they think we're the great Satan, let's kick their ass. Mental, let's use it. You know what I mean, Jeff? Use everything in our advantage. Mental, physical, especially, obviously, physical. We're stronger than them. Like you said, we put their Navy, not the U.S. Navy, Jeff. I'm kidding you. But, yeah, Jeff, we should use everything that in our arsenal.
Well, look, I never want to speak for the president, obviously, but I think Trump is clearly now, he's being advised in that direction. I think his instincts now are pointing in that direction. I think we're slowly but surely we're heading there. And I think the deaths of those U.S. service members have really pushed him now in that direction. Look, they're killing our boys now. Okay, I don't know if I'm saying that affectionately. I don't know if they were men or women, but they're killing our men and women now. Our boys and girls, as I like to say. Yeah. And, they're not shooting them out of the sky. They're not taking them down if we're, whatever, doing a land invasion. No, they're launching drones and missiles hundreds and hundreds of miles away in another country that has done nothing to Iran. Jordan is one of the most moderate, non-aligned countries in the entire Middle East. Really, it's run by it's a socialist monarchy. It's a heavy welfare state. I don't like the way they run their economy. It makes them very dependent on foreign aid. We give them a lot of foreign aid, and they're very grateful for it. But Jordan poses a threat to nobody. Really, seriously, they don't pose a threat to nobody. And their leadership is very sober, very moderate. I don't want to say secular quite, because they do allow, Islam, but they're not fanatics. They're not extremists. They're just not. So they don't threaten anybody. They don't threaten Israel. They don't threaten Iran. They don't threaten Saudi Arabia. They don't threaten Turkey. They don't threaten Egypt. They're just, it's Jordan. They just try to get along with everybody in a way because they have to get along with everybody. And you're going to start bombing the hell out of them? I know they targeted our U.S. base, Dave, but they're targeting more than the U.S. bases. See, that's the part now. That's where I say, well, no, that's an act of aggression. That's an act of war. So, Americans are now dying, and our allies are being attacked. International law is being violated. I think the president's going to say, we're going to do something, or we're going to do something big. And I think he may start dropping some of those Moabs. I think one of them is going to be on the IRGC headquarters. I think he's going to hit the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, their headquarters, and he's going to turn it into a massive pancake, or I guess, as you put it, a massive crater. But I think what he's also got to do, Dave, is we can't keep doing this all on our own for many reasons. I think you have to start bringing other countries in. You know the expression, they have to have skin in the game? Nobody, outside of Israel, obviously, no one has skin in the game. The Israelis do, but that's it. Well, I think Mark really hit the nail on the head. You're being bombed. Your civilian infrastructure is being demolished. Your people are being killed. Come on. Do something. Now, I get it. You want the green light from the United States. Fine. But call up President Trump and say, listen, I don't know, we got 25 fighter jets. We're going to throw them at Iran. Let's go. Whatever. We got missiles. We want to start launching missiles back. Let's go. he's got to start getting the region behind him. That, I think, psychologically, as you put it, will break Iran's back. They have to feel that they're an isolated pariah state. They can't win this war. Militarily, diplomatically, emotionally, psychologically, no way. They stand alone against the world. They will lose. Final word to you, Dave. Am I wrong?
No, Jeff, you're 1,000% right. I'll steal some of your thunder. But also, Jeff, too, you got to remember, long before this was going on, Qasr in Iran, that's a missile base, if I'm not wrong, right? In Qasr?
Yes.
Okay? And they also had their Air Force there, too, to protect those missile bases. Number one, Jeff, the Mossad had already infiltrated their government. So the Mossad, meaning the Israeli intelligence for you stupid dumbass liberals out there, like little Billy in Sudbury, Jeff, okay? They need to infiltrate again. Maybe they can wipe AIRGC so we don't have to waste the Moab, Jeff. Take them out like in The Godfather. Remember all the 5 families that were roasted like peanuts, So, but yeah, Jeff, I think that Israel needs to step up to little Satan according to Iran, not us, of course. And I'd like to see Saudi Arabia and Dubai, UAE get involved, Jeff. They brag how much of a military they got. Will step up or, quit running your mouth. And like you said, Jeff, earlier in the call, our men in that Paris Island, when you enter where I went to boot camp, it says we separate the men from the boys, Jeff. So we are men, boys, kind of. We still young, meaning like age, like you said, affectionately, which I know you would never mean in a bad way. But no, they're my brother, they're my younger brothers and sisters, Jeff.
Oh,
that's
amen.
how I look at them.
Amen. Again, Dave, I know I've said it a million times, but I can't say it enough. Thank you for your service, truly. And I think you make an excellent point. Look, Saudi Arabia, they got a very good Air Force. Saudi Arabia has a very modern, nice fleet of fighter jets. Believe me, if they wanted to join, they could do some damage to Iran. Kuwait has an Air Force. Everyone I don't mean like 2 planes. I mean, no, really, they have a pretty good Air Force. And they were trained by us. We sold them a lot of their fighter jets. In other words, come on, chip in. I'm sorry, and you're being attacked. Now, let me just say one other very quick thing, and then I want to go to the phone lines. 617-266-6868 is the number. I think what Trump, to me, this is my concern. It's now becoming almost like tit for tat. Iran hits a ship, a commercial vessel in the Strait of Hormuz. And by the way, Hormuz now is blocked. And I don't mean blocked because the Iranians have, put a navy there and blocked it. Is that there are so many missiles and drones going after commercial vessels that ships are just afraid to go through. It's just basically fear that's paralyzing them. So you're looking at a couple ships here, a couple ships there, but for the most part, almost no ships are getting through. Now that's going to be bad for the price of international global oil. So as you can tell already, I noticed this weekend, prices are starting to go back up. I had it down to, $3.79 a gallon, regular. It's now at $4. Not the end of the world. I'll pay the extra 21 cents, obviously. But I'm just noticing price is starting to tick up again. And that's where the mullahs want it. They want it at $4.50, $5 a gallon. So the strait now is at least temporarily blocked. And look, I think Trump, this tit for tat, where, we hit them much harder than they hit us, but they still hit us. And then we hit them again. You're degrading them, no question. You're weakening them, no question. But it just grinds on. What's the strategy? To me, the strategy give me the end game. What's the strategy for victory? And to me, the strategy for victory, you've got to unleash now the dogs of war on the regime. I understand we have the naval blockade. Excellent. Economic pressure. Sanctions, they can't sell any oil. Economic pressure. Great. But I think now, and the other thing I would bring in is we've got to bring back Mossad and Israel. The one thing I told Grace last night, how do the mullahs get away with threatening to assassinate publicly as part of a plan, a mission, the President of the United States and his entire cabinet? To me, my response is, okay, Moshtaba, you're going to join your father, Ali Khamenei. So you want to go to paradise? You want your 72 virgins? No problem. We'll deliver. We'll send you up there FedEx, first class. I would then launch an assassination campaign against the IRGC, decapitate their leadership, finish them off, and take out this Ayatollah. And then until they realize you keep fighting with us, no one's going to be left to lead your country. So if you have a death wish, if you all want to commit suicide, no problem. He's got to formulate an end game that pushes this regime to either cry uncle or you just wipe it off the face of the earth. Wipe this regime out. Period. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. In other words, are you in or are you out? To me, the one thing, as Churchill said, you never do in a war is half measures. So either you go for the jugular, you go for the knockout, or, as Mark said, you know what, guys, this is your region. You guys have to live with them more than we do. Now, their nuclear program, we've set it back a whole generation. We've severely degraded their military. Their economy is in serious trouble. Iran is very weak right now. Guys, you deal with them. You deal with the Strait and you deal with these animals. So either you're in or you're out. And if you're in, you're in. Curtis in Virginia. Thanks for holding, Curtis, and welcome.
Thank you for taking my call. I really appreciate it. And good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Curtis.
Good morning to you, too. Look, President Trump should never agree to a ceasefire. He should never have done that. To me, that's a Western way of thinking that you can deal with these snakes. You can't deal with them. They have their culture of death, and they believe by having this big war, they bring out the 13th Iman, whatever. Now, the supply of missiles and drones, that's coming from Russia, China, and maybe Korea. That's how they get in this stuff. I mean, there's a big lake or sea northeast of Iran. They probably shipping that stuff by boat, and they should have decimated the shipping docks and everything in that area so they can't land that stuff. That's my thinking on that. And the thing is that also Trump should use this opportunity to show that the Democrats are not being supportive of this war, to keep them from having a nuclear weapon. He should use that as a way of a campaign issue that the Democrats are doing this. And now I know that President Trump wanted them to have that funeral. To me, that'd been the perfect opportunity to get rid of these folks when they had that big funeral. That's me. I would have done that.
Oh, Curtis, you read my mind. I thought the exact same thing. I said you have the entire regime right there. Curtis, let me ask you this. If in World War II, just to show you how the times have changed, if in World War II, say a top Nazi leader was killed, and they're in Berlin now, and they're all in the open, and they're all mourning, a huge funeral, and they're all there. Hitler's there, Goebbels, Himmler, the whole, Goering, the whole gang. And there's millions of people mourning on the streets, but there they are, all of them, the heads of the military, the heads of the regime. You don't think Churchill and FDR would look at each other and say, could we be so lucky? And order one of these, at the time it was B-52s, order a mother B-52 and say, guys, bombs away. Curtis, am I wrong?
You're not wrong, sir. You're not wrong. To me,
and we should have done the exact same thing. You're completely right. Look, I think, Curtis, you hit every point. I really do. I think excellent. Curtis, I think there were two mistakes in this war. Not that they're irreversible. No mistake is, irreversible, or most aren't. But I think in the war, they made Trump and his team made two mistakes. Number one, and it goes to what you were saying, they should have prepared for Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz, because that's the only leverage Iran has. And they've milked it now for all that it's worth. That's why we're still there. That's what's driven oil through the roof. That's why the war is not over. So I think that was a key mistake. I think the second mistake is exactly what you said. The ceasefire is a Western way of thinking. It's a civilized, humane way of thinking. We've had 4 weeks, 40 days of war. We've beaten the hell out of you. Be reasonable. Let's make a deal. That's what Trump was saying. These snakes, as you put them, vipers, they look at, they've stopped bombing us for 40 days. Let's import more weapons. Let's go to China, North Korea, Russia. Send us everything you have. Let's start rebuilding, reconstituting, digging out stuff that we've stored away in other places. So they didn't see it as, let's stop the destruction and devastation of our country. They saw it as, let's keep fighting the great Satan, the great infidel, to the death. So we got a reprieve. Let's get ready for round two. Curtis, final word to you.
I believe that the GPS locations are coming from Russia or China. That's why they've been so accurate. That you need a source like a spotter to know where your targets are, and I believe they're getting that information. Where's Europe on this stuff? They still haven't gonna come down there and help us out. They should bring their neighbor down there and help us out, but they haven't done that. That's my thought on that. And thanks for taking my call, sir.
Oh, thank you. Great call, Curtis. Great call. Look, if the French still have a bit of a navy, even the Brits, I know they've declined, but they still have a couple of nice naval ships. I mean, I'm being honest. If the Europeans would help us, this thing is over. I mean, it's just over. I'm not saying that they're so strong, but what I'm saying is, when you have that many countries arrayed against you, eventually, I don't care who you are, you're just going to collapse. So again, where are the Europeans when we need them? Curtis is not 100, he's 1,000% correct. And notice, when they need us, we're always there. Now, I disagreed with the policy, but look, facts are facts. Russia invades parts of Ukraine. Europe is panicking. Did they help Ukraine? A little. Who's the one that sent them almost all of the weapons? We did. Who's the one that sent hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine in aid? We did. So you see, whenever Europe faces a challenge, I don't want to even mention the Cold War or World War II or World War I, where we literally saved them. Now, as Trump said, we need a little bit of help from you. And I can't, hello? Is there anybody there? So, in the end, after a while, yes, I blame the Europeans. But, if someone keeps mooching off of you, leeching off of you, and you keep allowing it to happen, you got to, after a while, blame yourself. You're like, yeah, whatever. Timmy's a leech and a parasite. Yeah. He's been eating for free and sleeping in your house for, 50 years now, 60 years now. But who let him? You did. After a while, you got to say, get out, get a job, fend for yourself, move, vamos. It's time for us to get out of Europe. And it's time for us to get out of NATO. clearly, NATO is not a two-way street. It's a one-way street. If it benefits the Europeans, great. They love it. But whenever we ask for something in return, suddenly, Bob in Plymouth. Thanks for holding, Bob, and welcome.
Morning, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Are you all soccered out now? I know I am. Anyway, the reason I called, most all of it's been covered by many people. And I've been saying since the beginning that we've got to go all out against these people. There is no reasoning with them, and there's no negotiating with them. Now, somebody very close to you the other day called me a war hawk. And I took it as a compliment, and I'm going to keep it as a compliment. What say you?
Well, yeah, I mean, what's wrong with being a war hawk? I think to me, there's a difference between a war hawk and a warmonger. A warmonger is, Lindsey Graham, the late Lindsey Graham, or John McCain, McManiac, which is someone who just wants war with almost every country on the planet. Their solution to everything is perpetual war. And that, to me, is a warmonger. And that's someone that's very dangerous. Because, say, we go to war with Russia, that could lead to World War III. We go to war with China, that could lead to World War III. So, World War III, nobody wins. So, you always want to avoid war with great powers, especially nuclear powers. But no, if a war hawk means once you're in a war, you fight it to win the war. To me, that's the only way to fight a war. You know, Bob, I'm a very simple man in my life personally and how I view the world. Generally, I always say this. Either you're in or you're out. Fish or cut bait. You know, the British have an expression, in for a penny, in for a pound. So if you're going to do something, do it right. Go all in and do it. Achieve it. Or don't do it. Now, believe it or not, I know this sounds like almost contradictory or an oxymoron, but if you follow that philosophy, you're generally going to be okay in life. In other words, okay, you know, whatever, there are problems if you don't get involved, but then you're not involved. So you're not implicated in this. You can do whatever you want to do. You have freedom of action. If you get involved, you can potentially solve a very serious problem. But, you know, war is nasty and it's ugly and it never goes the way people predict it's going to go. But we used to win our wars. Now we never win our wars, even though we never lose a battle. In Korea, we never lost a battle. In Vietnam, we never lost a battle. Afghanistan, 20 years, we never lost a battle. Iraq, we never lost a battle. But we were never fully committed to go all in. And ultimately, we were betrayed by the politicians. And I think what a lot of people don't understand, because I get the emails all the time, Bob, is, in fact, I got a really good one yesterday, saying, Jeff, I'm against the Iran war. Well, not because I don't hate the mullahs. I do. It's not that I don't think they pose a threat. I think they do. But let me tell you what's going to happen. We're not going to finish the job. And then a Democrat's going to get elected in 2028, and it's got to be a much bigger mess than ever than when we started. In other words, politically, especially with the Democrats and with the media, we're constantly putting rules of engagement upon ourselves that make it almost impossible to win. And that's why a lot of people say just don't even bother going in, because then it's very hard to get yourself out. So I'm of a mind, either go in and finish the job, and that's in life, by the way. You know, you love someone, pursue them, love them, marry them, and be done with it. If your parents oppose you, it doesn't matter. If you believe that's the woman for you, as it was for me, I don't care who opposes it. I'm going to go for it. Or you go, I'm going to get so much opposition, it's going to give me a headache. I don't like the headache. I don't want the headache. Then leave it alone. But what you don't do, and I see this all the time, they kind of go for it. They have something going. The parents get involved, and then the whole thing gets broken up. And now you're devastated, she's devastated, and both of them are never the same again. In other words, never do half measures. Never do half measures. Fish or cut bait. Now, I believe Trump is going to fish. I don't think he's going to cut bait. And he's not going to be George Bush, who's going to hand over Iraq to Obama for him to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And he's certainly not Biden, who's going to cut and run and literally hand over Afghanistan to the Taliban on a silver platter. So I think now what Trump wants to do, and to his credit, he wants to knock them out, but he wants to do it as surgically as possible to minimize civilian casualties as much as possible. And that's why don't be shocked if we take Karg Island. Watch out for Karg Island. We're going to take Karg Island, cut off their oil, and I don't think the regime can recover from that. And I think he is going to join with Israel now. I think he's on the phone with Bibi, and you watch. Some of these leaders are going to be dropping like flies. So you're going to see, I think, a resumption of the war, all-out war. I think we're going to make a play for Karg. And I think Moshtaba is going to be joining his father very soon up in, with Allah and his 72 virgins. So, Bob, I could be wrong. I don't think so. From everything I'm hearing from this administration, they're putting together a plan to deliver the final knockout. They're going to go for their throat. And I think this time they're not going to miss. Bob, thank you so much for that call. As always, I appreciate it. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, a very deadly weekend in the war with Iran. The regime fired multiple missiles into an air base in Jordan. 2 American service members were killed. A third is missing. According to CENTCOM, they believe they have found the remains of that third U.S. soldier. And they believe that he has now been identified as dead, or she. Now, we don't know the names yet because they want to notify the families first before they tell the public and the media. So it now appears that 3 U.S. service members were killed in that devastating missile attack from the regime in Iran. Also, an American soldier in northern Iraq was killed after trying to do a controlled detonation of an Iranian drone after it attacked one of our bases in northern Iraq. So, 4 are dead. Many have been wounded in the attacks. Persian Gulf countries have been pounded by Iranian missiles and drones over the weekend. President Trump now has dramatically escalated the bombing and missile campaign. We are, just punishing Iran right now, hitting dozens and dozens of targets along the Strait of Hormuz. About 50 targets have been hit across Iran. This was just over the weekend. So the war is now teetering on an all-out war like we had for the first 40 days. Trump now says if we go to an all-out war, he will deliver the knockout blow. Should he? Can he? What say you? 617-266-6868. Jason in Colorado. Thanks for holding, Jason, and welcome.
So you asked the question of why are these countries in the Middle East not helping us out? Okay, so I'm a veteran. I deployed multiple times over there. My dad was retired Army, and he spent 20 years working as a contractor. Now, he says the Saudis used to always ask him, if Saddam comes over here, are you going to come help us again? They have no historical or national pride. They don't want to help. And they're all wealthy. So serving in the military to them is not really ideal. They have money, and it's not worth their time. They are always going to depend on us. That's just the matter. Because we helped them out in 1990, And now they're all expecting us to just keep doing it.
So, Jason, basically what you're saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that they're essentially a protectorate. They see themselves as a protectorate. They give us money, almost like a mercenary relationship. They give us money, we protect them, and almost like, why aren't you guys doing a better job of protecting us against Iran, correct?
Yes, it's just they don't think that it's their responsibility to protect themselves because, you know, they have all the oil, they give that to us, and it's just, you know, and like I said, we helped them out in 1990, and that was a big mistake, and now they just expect us to keep doing it.
Jason, since you've been in that region, your father's been in that region, you know that region extremely well, like the back of your hand. If President Trump is listening right now, and you're his advisor, say for a day, and he says, Jason, what do I do? I'm at this crossroads. I got more American soldiers dead. Strait of Hormuz has been reblocked. Gas is starting to go back up. I'm in a battle of wills now over who controls Hormuz. I want to finish this. I want peace with honor. They're going to fight to the bitter end. What's your advice? What would you say, Jason?
Well, as somebody who has studied Persian history all the way back from Darius, they're not going to stop. They are going to dig in, and you can throw everything that we have at them, and they're going to keep giving back up, and they're going to keep sending every young man, and they'll even send women. They used to do that in ancient Persia, send women into battle to mock the men and create a distraction. They're not going to give up. We need to pull out. It's over.
Really? Jason, let me ask you this. So you're saying no matter, so you're saying they're just going to absorb punishment after punishment after punishment after punishment, and I mean, unless you drop a nuke on them, you're saying there's no way we can win this, correct?
That's the only way you can end it, and you know, I'm shaking right now, and I don't want that.
Oh, I
don't
understand.
want to see, you know, I spent the first career at Dover Air Force Base at the beginning of Iraq, seeing casket after casket after casket coming off of planes. And I don't want to see that, and I don't want young men and women to have to go through the PTSD and all of that I go through. So we just need to get out of there. There is no point of us being over there. Let Israel fight their war.
Jason, let me just play devil's advocate. And by the way, again, I want to thank, in case we, get cut off, I want to thank you for your service. Yeah, you know how much I love you, vets. In a non-sexual way, obviously. What do you say to the argument that if we pull out, Iran effectively then controls the Strait of Hormuz? That's 1/5 of the world's oil and gas supply, almost 30% of the world's fertilizer. They will have the boot on the neck of the global economy. They will have emerged much stronger than when the war began, and they can blackmail the region and the world simply by controlling the Strait of Hormuz. They'll charge tolls, fees, they can bring billions of dollars in cash, and they can essentially either rebuild their nuclear program or even buy a nuclear weapon, say, from Pakistan. So if we leave now, we're basically giving the mullahs the mother of all victories. What say you?
Well, Bob Lazar brought this up a few months back. Now, any physicist worth their salt can develop a nuclear weapon, and he said Iran probably already has it. It is the delivery system. That is what they don't have. So, we're just fighting an uphill battle right now. And if Iran wants to control the Strait of Hormuz, well, that's their prerogative. Egypt charges a toll to use the Suez Canal. Panama charges a toll to use the canal. So why are we dictating that Iran can't charge a toll to use the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, it's just the nature of it. They lie in that region, and the strait is right next to them. So it's just the nature of the beast.
Jason, again, good, very good arguments. Let me ask you this, just to continue with this, this sort of, just sort of back and forth. What do you say I'm playing devil's advocate. Okay, but what about the other countries in the region? They use the Strait of Hormuz. Why should Iran control the strait? And Iran is the number one state sponsor of terrorism in the world. Do we really want them to control the Strait of Hormuz and economically blackmail the region and the world and potentially get a windfall of cash where they can't get the delivery system for a nuke? So are we prepared to risk these religious fanatics and giving them the bomb? What say you?
Well, those countries there have endless amounts of money because of the oil. Why have they not been developing pipelines? Why are they only dependent on that one 20-mile wide waterway? That's their problem.
Jason, thank you very much for that call. And again, thank you for your service. Now, one of the big developments, the media's almost ignored it, not quite, but almost ignored it, is that Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and these other countries working with the United States and Israel are now developing one of the largest oil gas pipelines in the world. Precisely what Jason talked about. So they don't have to rely on the Strait of Hormuz anymore.
CENTCOM says that there will be outsized action in retaliation, but I don't understand how it's possible that Iran has the capabilities to fight this way and continue to try to lash out at Gulf countries and U.S. military bases, because the U.S. has obliterated Iran's military, and the president continues to reiterate that.
That was Maria Bartiromo on Fox. Asking, frankly, what many, and she's a very close, staunch supporter of the president, frankly, as I am. And that was almost word for word what, I was talking to Grace about last night. I'm like, I don't get it. The Iranian Navy is at the bottom of the ocean or the bottom of the sea. The Iranian Air Force has been absolutely obliterated. Their air defense is smashed. Their military completely degraded. Their missile stockpiles blown up or demolished, and yet they're still firing drone after drone, missile after missile, to the point that you have U.S. service members now killed in Jordan. One other died in northern Iraq, and they are hammering the Persian Gulf countries. They're hammering their oil refineries, their oil infrastructure, their airports, their desalination plants, their power plants. They're hitting civilian residential areas, not just bases. And, as Jason rightly pointed out from Colorado, they don't feel the need to defend themselves because they have all this oil, and we protected them when Saddam moved on Kuwait and then tried to move on Saudi Arabia, and they feel, well, we're paying you all this money, you protect us. And so now we are teetering on the brink of an all-out war, resumption of war, full war with Iran. Should we go all in, or should we just leave and go home and just end this thing, as Jason in Colorado is urging? He's a veteran, suffered PTSD for his service for our country. That's why I always thank him, and vets everywhere, saying, look, you don't know the Persian mentality. You don't know the Persian mindset. They will fight to the death. That's the way they've waged war for thousands of years. And it will not stop now. And unless you're willing to drop a nuclear bomb or, literally, bomb them off the face of the earth, unless you're willing to go to that extreme, they're just not going to give up. So let Israel deal with it. Let the other countries in the region deal with it. We need to come home. Agree, disagree. Mags in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Mags, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff, and as always, thank you, Sandy and Mike, for everything that you do, and God bless you.
Thank you,
Keep
Mags.
safe. And listen, I don't agree with Jason at all. I think we need to go in there and finish this off. Get this done and say goodbye to them. Finish it off, open up the strait, and be done. And we should have done this since day one. And I don't understand Trump for the first time. I don't understand why we just didn't go in there, get the job done. See ya, goodbye. These people hate us more than anybody else. They want to see death and destruction to our country, and yet we feel the need to keep them alive? I don't really understand that. And I'm a good person. I believe in God. I believe in taking care of other countries. I believe in taking care of the people in our country first, though, honestly. And we neglect that all the time. And I'm sorry for Jason that he has PTSD, and I appreciate our veterans more than anything in the world for fighting for our country, and I think that you know that, Jeff. But I think we need to go and obliterate them. Finish this off and be done with it, Trump. Let's be done with it.
Well, you know, Mags, just to piggyback off of what you're saying, this is, now, look, maybe this is being done covertly. You don't want to ever advertise this. So even if they were doing it, they shouldn't say anything, and I hope they're never going to say anything. I'm just speaking from the heart, like you are. Once they came out last week and said that the mission of the regime now, according to the IRGC and the Ayatollah, is to assassinate Trump and to kill off his entire leadership, the entire leadership of our country. J.D. Vance, dead. Rubio, dead. Hegseth, dead. The entire cabinet, dead. And they were dancing on the grave of Lindsey Graham and saying that's exactly what they want. They want more American leaders dead. To me, that is an open, naked declaration of war. And the only response is, we're going to, now, you think you're going to kill us? No, 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 no. To the Ayatollah, say goodbye to your children because you're joining your father in paradise. To the entire Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps leadership, you're dead men walking, every single one of you. In other words, we need to completely wipe out their leadership. And either we do it through bombing, we do it through targeted assassinations. We have Mossad, who's infiltrated their regime quite well. We partner with Israel and surgically remove this regime, period, full stop. And then tell them, we're going to kill one Ayatollah, the next Ayatollah is dead, and the Ayatollah after that is dead. Once they cross that Rubicon, where they said the mission of the regime going forward, their ultimate goal and purpose is to murder the president and murder our entire leadership in the United States. I don't know how you can go back from that. I wouldn't even send a negotiator. What are they going to do? Torture him? Kill him? Imprison him? Hold him hostage? Or hold them hostage? So at this point, there's nothing to discuss. There's nothing to negotiate. We kill their leadership before they kill our leadership. Mags, am I wrong? Final word to you.
Jeff, we need to go in there and obliterate the country, period. There's no going picking off this, picking off that, picking up this. There's no doing that because we would have already done that. And if it's covert, good for Trump. But I'm going to tell you something right now. After they threatened us with those bold threats last week, they should have been obliterated this weekend. It should have been over and done with. Done. God bless America and
God bless you. Mags, thank you as always for your call. You know what? Let me throw a log, super quick log on the fire off of Mags's call because I do get a lot of text message like today. You can text us 70470, 70470. Obviously, you can email the Kuhner Man anytime. Many of you are saying, you're saying for the first time, I've really disagreed with Trump, but not because you're anti-war. I get that a lot. You know, he promised not to, forever wars, no more wars. This is becoming a long war, a protracted war. He needs to focus on domestic issues. That I get from, I wouldn't say a majority, but a good chunk of Kuhner country who voted for Trump 3 times and consider themselves MAGA and America first. But now what I'm starting to hear is what Mags just said. I never thought I would criticize Trump. I never thought I'd be publicly opposed to him. But it's almost like Trump is too soft. He's not being hawkish enough. Why are you holding back? I mean, I'm just paraphrasing the arguments. Why are you holding back? I'm getting this now more and more. Obliterate him. Finish him. Finish the job. What are you waiting for? Do what you got to do and let's win this war. Because we're now 5 months into the war. And the midterms are just a couple of months away. So stop beating around the bushes. Stop pulling your punches. Are we in a war or are we not in a war? And if we're in a war, you go for the knockout. And you do whatever it takes. And I'm starting to sense from, it's not just Mags. I get a lot of this now. Jeff, I don't understand. He's holding back. Why is he holding back? And what's making this now more urgent for many of you is because now U.S. service members are dying again. The pause in the fighting allowed Iran to rebuild and to rearm. And now, as this war goes tit for tat, and you see this escalation, now you're starting to see service members dying or being maimed. And so people are rightly saying, hey, when you've got American men and American women coming home in body bags, it's a couple, I understand, it's not thousands or hundreds or even dozens, but still, it was 3, if you count the one in northern Iraq, that's 4 over the weekend. What are we holding back for? So what? Another 2 or 3 will die, and then another 2 or 3, and then another 2 or 3? So it's the first time I've seen, if you want to call them the hawks, the war hawks, are starting to say to Trump, you're just not hawkish enough. So he's got the anti-war people on MAGA turning on him, and now he's got the hawks for the first time publicly questioning him. So my question to you, throw this log. Do you think Trump has been too restrained, has been too unwilling to take the gloves off and finish this war? Has Trump been too soft in his prosecution of the war? Too timid, in your view? 617-266-6868. Russ in Boston. Thanks for holding, Russ, and welcome.
Jeff, it's time to throw the whole country into chaos. Force the people to overthrow the government. My only complaint from the beginning, we needed to force the able-bodied Iranian refugees in this country to be trained for the land invasion. The evil leaders in Iran would fear the being slaughtered during a land invasion. And they don't fear a land invasion. And that's the biggest problem. Now, I do agree with those who want to see rich countries in the Middle East take a more active part in the military operations. But always remember President Trump. He's a decent person. And by nature, yes, he carries the big stick, but he always wants to use the carrots first. And no matter what happens, if he sees the opportunity to use the carrot again, he'll use the carrot. And that's one of the many reasons why I love about this person. He's not a warmonger. He's not an evil person, okay? He leads this country with a heart, okay? So I agree with him, except for the fact that we should have prepared these Iranian refugees for land invasion, not only here, but also in Europe. And I firmly believe that people have to fight for their country and not expect other people to do the fighting for them.
Oh, Russ, on that, as usual, I agree with you. Not 100, but 1,000%. Russ, I've got to ask you, you served multiple tours in Vietnam. You see how politicians can bungle a war. The troops deliver victory, and the politicians essentially snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And I've got to ask you, they're not training the Iranians who are here. They should, but they're not. I mean, it just is what it is. At this moment, we're in the Middle East. We're in the war. American soldiers are dying again. We've resumed heavy bombing, not like it was, during Operation Epic Fury, but we're starting to really hit some targets. What do you think the president should do right now, today, at this moment?
In the beginning, he has to bring the country into chaos, knock out all their bridges, knock out all their water treatment plants. Everything they need to do to survive has to be knocked out. And as I said, once you bring the country into chaos, people have no other choice but an uprising. It has to happen. There's no choice. But again, a lot of people are going to suffer because these SOBs do not fear the land invasion. And they know that. And that's why they'll keep doing what they're doing as long as they have. And Jeff, I'll say something that I have said before in the past, okay? The biggest mistake we made in Vietnam, and I know there's some veterans that will disagree with this, we should have done a much better job in winning the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people. And let me tell you what we should have done, okay? Unfortunately, it's spilt milk and there's nothing that could be done now. But we should have concentrated beginning in the Delta by applying the principle of the Peace Corps and improve their standard of living and force them to hate the regulars and force them to hate the Viet Cong. And then you work your way north up the country while we level them as far as the war is concerned. They're mining their ports, knocking the hell out of Hanoi and the whole 9 yards. But in the meantime, start building the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people from the south. Again, starting in the Delta and moving north. Okay, now that's Vietnam. Now let's take Afghanistan, all right? Women in that country are treated worse than animals, okay? Now, we had the opportunity while we were there for 20 years to train about 4 battalions of women, all right, and let them defend their country. And you know what? They might have had to go in and even kill their father, their brother, even maybe their sons, okay, and take over from all the village chiefs. And let me tell you something. And anyone that doubts that, just think of the Israeli women, how great combat soldiers they are. And I'll tell you, they taught me women can fight in combat. And if you have any doubts about that, go in the family court and see how vicious women can be during divorce proceedings, okay? So there's no question. 2 mistakes. Now, after that, after what I said about Vietnam and also Afghanistan, we should have been prepared for the land invasion by the Iranian people themselves.
That's interesting. Very, very interesting point. Russ, as always, thank you very much for that call. Look, we're not going to get the Iranians ready, obviously, now to invade, to take over their country or take it back. But Russ is completely right. The regime does not fear any troops on the ground because, for the most part, it's been taken off the table. So they don't fear a land invasion. And that's why they're able to fire rockets, fire missiles, fire drones with abandon. Let me put this on the table then. Should we be now sending in potentially U.S. ground forces? Trump said he hasn't ruled it out. Should we send in at least 15 to 20,000 troops to take Karg Island, which is their economic lifeblood, where all of their oil goes to be sold to the international, the global markets? Or should we send in several 100,000 troops and essentially topple the regime? In other words, let them now worry about a massive U.S. ground force invasion, and maybe the Ayatollahs will sue for peace. Or are they just waiting to unleash their suicide bombers and kill as many soldiers as they did in Iraq? Should we send in U.S. ground troops? 617-266-6868. Pete in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Pete, and welcome.
Loved you in the morning. I've loved you in the afternoon. I've loved you at night in a non-sexual way before you became a warmonger.
Oh, Pete, come on now. Don't you? That's a bit strong, a warmonger. All right,
what
Pete,
kind
go
of a
ahead.
wor-
I know you're
what
against
would
the war. I hear you, because you called last week and you want us out. I understand. Now, Pete, what do you make of the deaths of the U.S. soldiers in Jordan? And before you answer, where is Iran getting all of these missiles and drones? What's your theory? Go ahead, Pete.
We cannot destroy them from the air. Have you ever heard of the Samson option?
Where the whole thing just comes crashing down, right?
They can destroy the oil industry completely. And imagine America with $10 or $15 a gallon gasoline. Where are we then? This country is, if they screw with us much longer, we're going to kill ourselves, not them. We can't whip these guys. We don't have an army, and we've got horrible leadership, incompetent leadership, starting with Trump. They got to arrest him and get him out of that office. He's compromised and corrupt.
Now, when you say he's compromised and corrupt, how do you mean, Pete?
Kids are getting rich. Netanyahu's telling him what to do. The evidence is everywhere. He's a general. He's going to lead us out in battle. You're nuts thinking he can do anything like that. He is not in charge. Netanyahu is. And he's got the nukes. If you're worrying about nukes, worry about him and his nukes. That's where you should be focused. Not Iran.
You mean Israel?
Yes. If anybody's going to blow up a nuke, it's going to be the Israelis. When they see they are going to lose their country over this.
Pete, now I'm just curious, why do you think Iran is going to win this war? Their Navy, their Air Force, their military, their air defense systems have been absolutely eviscerated. Their economy is 300, 400% inflation. Their economy's in a shambles. There's a naval blockade. It's like a vice grip. They're being strangled. Sanctions have been reimposed. The region is against them. They're attacking Persian Gulf countries now. They're blowing up their infrastructure. They're basically a pariah. The whole world pretty much hates them, with the exception of China and Russia and North Korea. But for the most part now, the world wants nothing to do with them. So why do you think Iran is holding all the cards?
Do you think that this story of
much stronger than what our government has led us to believe?
Of drones and missiles, they're fighting the war the way it's going to be fought from now on. And a computer screen pushing buttons, and those aircraft carriers. What are you going to say?
Interesting. Okay, well, Pete definitely, he's against the war. Okay, text line is on fire. You can text the Kuhner Man at 70470, 70470. This is from 603. Good morning, Jeff. No war has ever been won without ground troops. 10,000 Marines will take any island or facility they decide to try and defend. So many of you are saying, look, you can't win a war through air power, sea power, or missiles alone. You have to put boots on the ground. And either we put boots on the ground, or it's time to start arming the vast anti-regime forces and groups within Iran. If they're not willing to fight for their country, then it's going to be almost impossible to topple the regime. That's what many of you are saying. And I gotta ask the question. It's, to me, the $64,000 question. Where are the Iranian people? That is now the question. And why? I know they rose up before and they are unarmed and they got absolutely slaughtered. But so far, the Iranian people are silent. 617-266-6868 is the number. Dave in Revere. Thanks for holding, Dave, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Dave?
Playing hooky today, Jeff.
I'm sorry, what?
I'm playing hooky today.
Oh, you're not working today?
7 days a week, Jeff. I'm taking a day off for the first time in who knows how long. So, Jeff.
You. Honestly, Dave, you deserve it. You work so hard. Enjoy it.
Jeff. So, Jeff, here's one thing. The Iranian people are scared of the dictation of the regime over there. Number two, Jeff, I think the reason why Donald Trump isn't sending everything he knows he's able to send is because, Jeff, he's read the entire scriptures, and he knows what the end result's going to be. Jeff, honestly, there's no real solution to this war over in the Middle East, Jeff, because this is where it's all going to come to the boiling point. Jeff, it's going to come down to the, I don't know, how could you say it without getting paranoid, but Jeff, it's going to come down to the book of Revelation, the way the book of Revelation says. It's all going to come down that way, Jeff. And it's like Donald Trump knows what the end result's going to be. So people need to take a good, hard look at the way things really are and just realize there's no solution for a war to end because it's not going to end, Jeff. These people over there that are terrorizing all the innocent people over there are just demons, Jeff. They're all demons of the ancestors of the Babylonians and the Philistines and all that over there, Jeff. They're not going to give up. And if Donald Trump decides to send a nuke over there and, just blow it all up, then at the same time, Jeff, you got Israel who's going to get bombed at the same time. And the scriptures say, if those who destroy Israel will be destroyed by God.
Well, I got to say, Dave, the only other regime that I think has any kind of historical parallel to what we're seeing now in Iran, believe it or not, it's not even Nazi Germany. It's not, because at the end, you had, even Himmler defected to the West and wanted to, surrender but he didn't want to surrender to the Russians because he knew the Russians were going to murder all of them. But he said he wanted to surrender to the Americans, to us, to the Allies. Even the top leadership at the end abandoned Hitler. So, yeah, they were fanatics, no question, murderous fanatics, savages. But even they had limits. To me, the regime that really comes to mind is that of Tojo and the fascist imperial Japanese, where it was a death cult. And it was fight to the end, fight to the end, fight to the end, fight to the end. No matter how many die, just keep fighting, 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 fighting. And there was something truly demonic about that regime. You mentioned demons. I look at this regime in Iran, 47 years, death to America, death to Israel, death to the Jews, death to Christians, sponsoring terrorism all over the region, all over the world. How many innocent men, women, children senselessly slaughtered? Openly talking about nuclear Armageddon. I mean, what kind of a regime talks like that? Bringing about the 12th Imam and the world engulfed in a ball of fire and the glories of nuclear war. When you say demons, I truly believe this is a demonic regime. I think there's no question. Okay, my friends, to the great audience of Kuhner Country, because Trump's people listen to this show, take it to the bank. And the president now is being strongly advised by people around him that it's time for him to start deploying U.S. ground troops if he wants to deliver a knockout blow. And President Trump now has openly said he is now, for the first time, seriously considering using or deploying U.S. ground troops, U.S. ground forces. This is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's quality roofing, siding, and windows. And I truly hope as many of you as possible participate in this poll, because I'd love to get the feel, the temperature of this audience, because this, to me, is the heart and soul of MAGA. This audience is MAGA. So Trump knows exactly where his base stands on this issue. Is it worth American boots on the ground to end the Iran conflict? In other words, are you willing to support American ground forces being deployed in Iran to end the war? In other words, to deliver a decisive defeat and a knockout blow. Do you want to now see American boots on the ground to win the war once and for all? A, yes. B, no. Now, it's very early in the voting, super early. But as things stand right now, 80% no, 18.8%. I'm just rounding off. 80% no, 20% yes. Interesting. Interesting. Very interesting. Again, still super early. Okay, you can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, Kuhn is in national ER. You can also vote via X, and oh boy, was I active on X last night. My handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, at the Kuhner Report, Kuhn is in national ER. Is it worth American boots on the ground to end the war in Iran? Maestro Mike, who would you like me to go to next on the call board? Dan in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Thanks for taking the call, Jeff.
My pleasure, Dan.
I'm disappointed with a couple of the callers. They're lap-sitting pussycats. I happen not to be one. This is what I think. We need to have a coalition. It needs to be an Arab coalition. I think we need to get out of NATO, or anyone that wants to continue something similar to NATO that is with us. They come along with the new coalition. We see where that takes us as far as what they're willing to contribute to this effort, being that it affects us all. I think that, ground troops could definitely be used, but may not be ours. And the other thing is, Jeff, we tried to be diplomatic. We tried to be merciful. We tried to be the country that's the most civilized in the world. We did all of that. Now they didn't want it. They rejected it. So what takes us here, and as you said earlier, this reminds me an awful lot of Japan and how tyrannical and how fighting to the last person, the last gun. This is what we're dealing with. We definitely need regime change. There is no doubt about it. This thing will come back to life. If there's no regime change, it will come back to life. And I'm telling you right now, they need to go. And quite honestly, what did we have to do to Japan? We had to drop an atomic bomb. I think that that's not out of the question. I think that they have to beat with overwhelming strength that they cannot continue. And in fact, I would beat them till they couldn't continue. I would have a new regime in there, no matter what it takes. As far as I'm concerned, you don't run from this situation because it's only going to get worse. And the people that said, Pete, I don't know, it may have been Jason, oh, we should back off. What? To have them come back in 10 or 20 years or sooner and blow us the hell up, which is exactly what would happen? You know that's what would happen. You can't run from the situation. You can't be a scaredy cat, basically. You have to have, some gumption. You have to have some testicles here. So what I'm trying to say is that you go in, you get these coalitions, you get as much support as you can possibly get. If we can get some ground troops, great. But before we start wasting American lives, I'd tell them, we're not going to nuke you. We're going to use an atomic bomb on you. And you know what? That's not going to be pretty. In fact, all of you are going to die. You're all going to die.
Dan, as you're talking, I'm just thinking, the expression, if you're going to kill the king, kill the king. In other words, the worst thing to do is to attempt to kill the king, but you fail. You wound the king. So now what you have is the worst of all possible worlds. Again, I go back to either you're in or you're out. Fish or cut bait. That's always in everything, not just in war or military or politics, in life. If you're going to do it, if something is going to be done, you do it right to the end. Or just don't do it. That's okay. But half measures is always the worst in anything. So if you wound the king, you see, if you didn't touch the king, then you may survive. Just whatever. You may get by. If you kill the king, well, then you've gotten rid of an evil monarch. Okay, that's it's all good. But if you wound the king, but you haven't killed the king, well, now he's going to go Thunderdome on you. He'll never forget. It's going to be revenge. It's going to be retribution, exactly what you're talking about. Whether they have the bomb, don't have the bomb, now they're going to be more determined than ever to get a bomb after what's been done. And whether people want to believe it or not, they're going to use that bomb. So they are going to pay us back in 10, 15, 20 years in their sick, twisted, evil mind. So we have to understand now that everything has been crossed. Every red line, every Rubicon has been crossed. And, you mentioned Trump was very civilized. That's exactly the point. What's changed now, should we resume the war, is that negotiations we now see are totally futile. They're completely just useless, a complete useless waste of time. Because no matter how good of an offer you give them, it's never good enough. So now we're left with, there's no diplomatic solution now. There's no negotiated deal to be made. It's either they win, we win, or we just go home and let the region deal with it. And essentially that would mean they win. So that's really now what the president is facing. And I don't think he wants to be the man that walks away. And I don't know if you ever followed boxing, Dan, but in the early 1980s, there was a great heavyweight champion. He came after Muhammad Ali. His name was Larry Holmes. Great left jab. He had a great right cross. He won the championship after Ali had, retired, and he held it. Don't quote me on this, but something like 10, 12 title defenses. Anyway, long story short, I admired him because not only was he a great boxer and a great fighter, but many times his opponent is on the ropes, defenseless, and Larry Holmes is jabbing, hitting him, and then he looks at the referee and he starts waving with his right hand like, stop the fight. Like, I don't want to kill the guy. I don't want to brain damage him. I don't want to permanently mutilate the guy. Like, he's not punching back. He's like a punching bag. I'm tearing his face apart. I'm probably doing brain damage. Like, stop the fight. He often did that. Like, he would call him in and say, like, stop the fight. Like, I'm not a butcher. And I remember Howard Cosell would interview him and say, Larry, you're a humane, civilized man. And I'm like, it's true. Ali, people say, yeah, when he wanted to, he could go for the throat. But there were many times he was in the ring with somebody. Clearly the person was defeated. Okay, just two very, very quick points. One is from Deborah, who, and I won't mention her last name to protect her anonymity, but Deborah emailed the Kuhner man, and she made the point that, Jeff, there is an answer to Maria Bartiromo's question on Fox. And we've played the cut now a few times, which is, where are the mullahs? Where is this regime getting all these missiles and drones to target Persian Gulf countries the way they have all weekend long, and to fire into U.S. bases like in Jordan, killing 2 service members, and it looks like now a third. One is gone reported missing, and apparently they've located remains of a body, and they believe it's the third service member. So you're looking at, dead service members now over the weekend by Iran's missiles and drones. Well, if the Iranian Navy is at the bottom of the sea, and their air force has been wiped out, and their military has been defeated and degraded, and their air defense systems have been smashed, and their missile stockpiles, have been severely damaged, where are they getting all this firepower from? And Deborah makes the point, and I think it's a very good point, that information is coming out from Iran, and many military experts are saying, well, during Operation Epic Fury, yes, we hit 14,000 targets, Israel and, of course, American fighter jets and missiles. So what did the mullahs do? A lot of their missiles and a lot of their drones and rockets, they hid in so-called civilian targets, knowing they would be protected. So they hid them in schools. They hid them in hospitals. They hid them in mosques. They hid them in, say, apartment buildings or factories. So knowing that if the United States or Israel tried to target or strike them, there would be an outcry that this was a war crime. And so that's why they were able to save or protect so many of these missiles and drones that they are now using to terrorize the region and now sadly kill at least several service members. So that's Deborah's point, and I think it's a very good one. Furthermore, many of you are texting the Kuhner man. I could, name you different numbers at the phone numbers they're coming from, but all of you are making the same point, which is Iran is getting key assistance from China. In particular, the use of China's satellite system, which is helping them with GPS tracking. And that's what's changed the nature of the war. With this satellite tracking, with this GPS tracking, that's why Iranian missiles have been, for the most part, very precise. And they know exactly which areas or sites to target. Because the Chinese are giving them, like a good GPS tracker, exactly the locations and how to guide the missile or guide the drone to hit their target. That's why they're taking out Kuwait's airport. They're taking out bridges. They're taking out water plants. They're taking out oil hubs. They're taking out oil infrastructure, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, you name it. And of course, military bases that our troops are stationed in, say, for example, in Jordan, because they've been hitting bullseye after bullseye after bullseye. So China is covertly giving Iran the communications, the satellite system, the GPS tracking in order to kill our service members. And for Iran, as Pete in New Hampshire put it, the Samson option, which is we're going to destroy all of the oil in the Middle East. You may destroy our oil infrastructure, but we're going to destroy every oil refinery, every oil export hub, every oil pipeline, you name it, we are going to destroy it. So the price of oil will go to $200. That's their strategy. Go to $200 a barrel and basically cause a global depression and lead to a recession here, hoping this will defeat Trump or knock him out in the midterm elections, and then the Democrats sweep back to power, and then the Iran war is lost. So the mullahs have a strategy, and they're counting on communist China and the Democrats to execute that strategy. And so the question now is, what should Trump do to counter what Iran is now banking on? Iran now wants an all-out war because they believe they can outlast us and eventually defeat Trump in November with higher gas prices and service members dying. What should Trump's response be? Should it be now to resume the war and go for the jugular, go for the kill shot, as they say? Or is it time to pull out and go back home? 617-266-6868. Jerry on the Cape. Thanks for holding, Jerry, and welcome.
Comrade.
Comrade, how are you, my friend?
It has been better. Jeff, you brought up something. I want to address something you brought up a little while ago about arming the opposition to the Ayatollah and the regime.
Yes, yes.
If you remember, about 6 weeks ago on Air Force One, a reporter asked the president about that, and he was very terse with that reporter. He let him have it. He snapped at him. He told me, he says, we've already tried that. What happened was the CIA armed the Kurds, and the Kurds kept all the weapons. But, Jeff, I want to address the plan right now. Either Marco Rubio...
Jerry, I promise I'll get to that. But so basically what you're saying is we've tried it. Basically the Kurds stabbed us in the back or double-crossed us. We gave them weapons to fight the regime. Instead, they pocketed the regime, and basically we got ripped off, correct?
The Kurds are still upset about Iraq and Afghanistan, because we turned our backs on them a couple times, But, Jeff, there has to be a plan in place. Secretary Rubio or President Trump, they have to meet with the Europeans and the Gulf states and get a commitment from them. And we have to remind them of the 3 Fs: fertilizer, fuel, and food. It's all cyclical between Europe and the Gulf states. And we have to remind the Europeans that we bailed them out of 2 world wars and rebuilt the entire continent. But, Jeff, they have to be willing to commit to boots on the ground. All the Gulf states and the Europeans, they have to. It's time for them to do some of the dying. Not always Uncle Sam dying. Not always our boys and girls dying. Other people have to pay the price too. We're not getting anything out of this really, except we're trying to eliminate the threat of death to America. That's all we're trying to do here. But Jeff, we have weaponry where we need to tell them straight out, the Europeans and the Gulf states, that if they don't help us, we're going to start unleashing the dogs of war on Iran. We're going to drop everything we have at them. And that's what you know what, Jeff? If we have to kill millions of people in order to save ourselves, that's what we have to do. It's unpleasant. It's horrible. But if that's what needs to be done to save your children and grandchildren, then that's what we need to do.
Jerry, comrade, let me ask you this. Again, let me just be devil's advocate for a second. Why should, and look, I hear you. We're going to unleash the dogs of war. We're going to rain hell. We are going to blast Iran back into the Stone Age. And if it takes killing millions, you do what you got to do. Well, if you're the leader of France or of England or Germany or Italy, or you're one of these, Saudi sheiks or Gulf sheiks, you're like, why should we send in even one soldier? You guys are going to do all the dirty work for us. In other words, okay, you're gonna riddle my opponent, riddle my rival, my enemy with bullets, bombs, missiles. You're going to finish them once and for all. and I should sacrifice my people. Why? Because you're already going to do all the heavy lifting. Whether you want to or not, you're going to do it. So why should we participate? What's in it for us? What do you say to that argument? They have no incentive to join us. What say you, comrade?
Jeff, survival. If they want to survive, they're petrified of the Iranians. They know they're unstable whack jobs from the 7th century. They know that. They're attacking everybody around them. They don't care. They're just doing it with impunity. But the bottom line is, Jeff, the Europeans in the Gulf states need to understand that it's about their survival. We're 6,000, 8,000 miles away. They're not.
I'm with you.
Am I right?
Comrade, I'm so with you. I mean, that to me is what I find stunning. Look, you say what you want about Israel, and I know many people are angry at Israel, and they think Israel pulls Trump's strings, which they don't, but let that go. Israel fights. Israel's always willing to fight. You know, Israel, yeah, they talk the talk, but they walk the walk. Say what you want about Israel. They'll take on everybody. And they're not afraid to take on Iran. So they'll put their men and women on the line. They'll fire as many missiles and launch airstrikes and drone attacks as they need to win. What I don't get is your point. You're completely right. Where the hell's Saudi Arabia? Where's Kuwait? Where's Bahrain? Where's Oman? Where's Qatar? I mean, just look at them. The UAE, where are these people? Jordan. I mean, your country's getting bombed. Missiles are hammering, forget your oil. They're hitting schools. They're hitting hospitals. They're hitting residential areas. They're blowing up your airports. Hell, they're blowing up your water plants. People have no idea. It's all desert. I mean, I know you know, comrade, but ordinary Americans are like, do you understand when you go for the water plants, you're saying I'm willing to kill millions of people. Outside of oil, the most precious commodity in the Middle East is water because they don't have any. So you're playing around now with millions and millions of people's lives. Look, to be fair to Trump, everyone's saying, oh, hit him hard. And I hear you. But Trump said, look, he gave a speech and he was answering questions then in the Oval Office. He goes, everybody wants me to hit the water plants. I don't want millions of people to not have no water. I'm not a savage. Come on. Like, in other words, he's like talking to the mullahs, like, think about your own people, for God's sake. You want millions of people to die? What is wrong with you? And I think it's the last thing he's going to hit. I think he wants to hit the bridges. I think he wants to hit the electric grid. I think he wants to hit maybe even oil infrastructure. But I think the last thing he wants to do is those, desalination plants. Because you take away the water, you're talking a lot of dead people. They're going to dehydrate. I mean, no water. You can't survive 3 days without water. Believe it or not, you can survive weeks without food. It's hard. It's difficult, but you can survive. 2-3 days without water, you're finished. So, comrade, I'm with you all the way. As always, comrade, thank you for that call. 617, just my opinion, take it for what it's worth. 617-266-6868. Eddie in Charlestown. Thanks for holding, Eddie, and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure.
I disagree with a couple of callers that want to pull out because we're the great Satan, and they want to take us out, and they will never leave their minds. They will never leave their thoughts. That's what they're aiming to do. So, if I was the president, you have to go in, and I'm a veteran myself, and I don't like to see anybody come home in a body bag. What do we have the Marines for? What do we have the Army for? What did these people sign up for? They knew what they were signing up. Someday you might have to put your life on the line. Well, guess what? The day has come. And hopefully it doesn't happen to a lot of people, but the Marines have to do their job. The Army has to do their job. The Navy's doing their job. The Air Force is doing their job. Let's everybody do all their jobs together and hopefully limit the loss of life. And if it gets out of control, then drop the nuclear bomb and end it, because there's no way out of this. There's no way out of it. They're worse than the Japanese, and we dropped 2 bombs on the Japanese, and they're worse than the Japanese. So I say unload all of our nuclear weapons and end it all, and that way it would teach China and Russia that we're not playing games. And that's how I feel about it.
Well, Eddie, look, you're right. It took 2 atomic bombs to finish the Japanese. And even then, I'm telling you this as an historian, trust me when I tell you this, the military leadership were so fanatical in Japan, they still didn't want to surrender. After Hiroshima, after Nagasaki. And it was the emperor, to his eternal credit, that stepped in and said, guys, it's over. I'm ordering you to surrender. And at the time, the emperor was almost like a god, like a human god. And so they had no choice. And then what happened across Japan was when they couldn't believe it, when the emperor then went on radio and broadcast that we're going to surrender now to the Americans. He mentioned Hiroshima, he mentioned Nagasaki, and he said, I am not going to risk 10, 15, 20, 25 million more lives. I will not do that. I will not preside over the extinction, the utter annihilation of Japan. And so these hard military men literally began to weep. They were weeping like children. And thousands, actually it's tens of thousands, but I'm going to go low to be cautious. Thousands of them committed what's called harikiri, which was they dressed up in samurai robes, the traditional way of the samurai, took a sword and disemboweled themselves. Basically, they committed suicide. That it was so humiliating to have surrendered. They said, we lose, we lose. There's honor in losing, but there's no honor in surrender. And so they said that Japan had dishonored itself, that the emperor's decision had dishonored them and all who died and fought for Japan. And so even then, so the emperor intercedes and tells them to stop. And even then, many of them, harikiri, they committed suicide. That's what you're going to see, by the way, in Iran. If one of the ayatollahs comes out and says, okay, it's over. It's over for whatever reason. Let's not even talk about the dropping of the bomb. Just for whatever reason. We rain so many missiles on them and we defeat them so badly. And the Ayatollah says, look, I'm not going to have millions of Iranians die. I'm just not going to have it. It's surrender. I think you're going to see mass suicides in the IRGC. I think there's no question. It's a very similar type of regime. Now, Eddie, look, this is one important difference, and I'm just being very frank and blunt with you and everyone out there, because I know many of you say, well, Jeff, why don't we drop a nuke or two, small nuke, limited nuke, not a major nuke. We don't want to pollute the entire area or, radioactive energy and kill so many people beyond the borders of Iran. Remember, Japan attacked us. I know we've been at war with Iran since 1979. I get it. And I know they've killed our soldiers in Iraq and other places. But Japan launched an act of aggression. They attacked us. They wiped out our Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. They slaughtered thousands of Americans. And then they officially declared war on us. We then went to Congress under FDR and officially declared war on them. And we were committed as a country, since we had declared war on them, it was total war, total victory, total surrender. So no matter what, we had to go into Japan, Tokyo, and overthrow the regime, like we overthrew Hitler in Berlin. And so we were committed to that policy. So that means we would, whether we liked it or not, we'd have to invade the home islands of Japan. And the military went to Truman, who FDR had now died, and said, we're looking at a minimum of 500,000 to most likely 1 million U.S. deaths and casualties if we're going to take Japan. Now, at this point, I think Truman had no choice but to use the 2 atomic bombs. Because had it come out that we had a weapon that could have ended the war and saved 500,000, 750,000, 1 million U.S. soldiers, saved their lives, I mean, the American public would have gone berserk. I mean, berserk. I mean, it'd be considered absolutely unforgivable. But we don't have that now. I mean, I'm just being honest with you, Eddie. Iran did not commit a Pearl Harbor. They just didn't. As much as I hate the regime, they didn't do that. They didn't wipe out our Pacific Fleet or our Atlantic Fleet. Yes, they've declared war on us, but we have not declared war on them. Trump has not gone to Congress and gotten a declaration of war. And he hasn't called total victory, total defeat, total surrender. So for him now, if he was to deploy an atomic bomb, A, it would be opposed by the entire world. B, I think it would be opposed by the overwhelming majority of the American people. And I think that's why Trump is never going to use it. Unless he absolutely has to. Eddie, I don't see Trump using that option. And to be frank, he doesn't need to use it. If he wants to bring down the regime, there are many ways to do it short of going nuclear. Just my honest opinion, Eddie. Eddie, thank you for your service. Thank you for your call. 617-266-6868. Okay, I get a lot of emails like this from Kuhner Country listeners. And so, to be fair, I want to read one. I want to make sure that every side in MAGA, every side in the Trump coalition has their voice heard and expressed. And by the way, if you want to email the Kuhner man, Jeffrey Kuhner at iHeartMedia.com. So it's Jeffrey Kuhner, Kuhner, at iHeartMedia.com. It's from Diane. Jeff, I, along with millions of other former supporters of Trump, are totally against this war that Trump and Netanyahu started. This should have never happened to begin with. Trump has spent and wasted half his term on BS foreign countries and has totally neglected our country. They are lying to us. They claim they obliterated everything last summer and then said the same thing recently. Trump brags about how much oil we have, and yet look at our gas prices. They're through the roof, along with everything else: food, utilities, energy, taxes, health care, and on and on. I'm sorry, Jeff, but Trump and his administration, with the exception of a very few, are a disaster. This is all about money and enriching themselves. And it's also disappointing that all the people who are against war are now for it, including Trump. Trump has shown his true colors, and he's fooled us all. Just look at Ukraine. He said he'd end it within 24 hours after he was inaugurated. Then Iran, he said days, then weeks. Now it's 5 months. Trump is a politician now and has welcomed the very people who bashed him and his supporters for years into his inner circle. So, A, Diane doesn't like his second term for the most part, and she definitely thinks this war has been a massive mistake. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, Mike, who do you want me to go to next? Kathy in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Kathy, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you. First of all, I agree 1,000% with Diane. She took all the words right out of my mouth and everything I wanted to say. And another thing I want to add, that I believe that this war has become an ego war. Trump doesn't like to lose. But you know what? At some point, he has to weigh up what he's gambling here. Some caller said that our military, this is what the military's for. Our military is to protect the United States. We're sending them into a war where we had no right to be there in the first place. We all these surrounding countries in Iran, where are they? We've practically, he said it 1,000 times, we've obliterated their military, their Navy, their Air Force. Well, you know what? If we've done such damage, why can't the surrounding towns go in, the surrounding countries go in and finish the job? This has become, like Diane said, it's a war that makes money, and at the cost of our troops. I am 1,000% against sending in ground troops. 1,000%. We have no right to be there from day one, and now this is only escalating, and things are not going to stop. After 9/11, our wars in the Middle East went on for 20 years, one conflict after another conflict, but it all stemmed from 9/11. Is that what this is going to be? Is he waiting to lose, 40, 50,000 kids, young kids? It's ridiculous. We shouldn't be there. And he has to put his ego aside, pull out, and tell the surrounding countries, you go in and be the closer. We're done. We've done it. We've started it, and we've put a big major dent in their military and their defenses. You finish it. And that's what I have to say.
Kathy, again, let me just be devil's advocate for a second. What do you say to the argument? Okay, I hear you, Kathy, but if we just pack up and go home, that means Iran has won the war, or they can claim they won the war. And that means they effectively control the Strait of Hormuz. And who knows, they may rebuild their nuclear program, and they could eventually threaten the region and the world again with a nuke. That by leaving now, we're allowing Iran to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. That this would effectively be a surrender on the part of Trump. What say you?
Well, I don't look at it that way. If Iran wants to claim victory, they can claim it all they want. We went in, we did a job. We annihilated most of their defense systems. So he says, why do we look like the person that's surrendering? We're pulling out and letting the people that need the Strait of Hormuz to go in there and finish it. We don't depend on that strait. That's not something we need. But all those surrounding countries who depend on that are sitting back and letting us lose. We've already lost too many. What is it?
Kathy, I got to say that the two sides. This is from Tim. He emailed me as well. You can email the Kuhner man, Jeffrey Kuhner, all one word, K-U-H-N as in national, E-R, at iHeartMedia.com. Jeffrey Kuhner at iHeartMedia.com. Here is what Tim wrote. Kuhner man, the comparison to the Japanese was left off without this all-important comment. Are we going to wait until they, meaning Iran, or the mullahs, until the Iranian regime hits us with a ballistic missile or nuke before we do? The Japanese hit us first. But in this case, we know Iran will hit us when they can. Thus, the whole reason we are doing it now. In other words, the reason why Trump is at war is to prevent a future Pearl Harbor. Except this time, it won't be bombs they'll be dropping. It could be a nuclear bomb they're dropping. And then that's the point about Pearl Harbor. We were ambushed. We were sucker punched right in the back. And they destroyed most of our Pacific fleet. It was an open declaration of war. They attacked us. Thousands of sailors were dead. FDR went to Congress, declared war, and demanded unconditional total surrender. Nothing less would do. And what many Trump supporters are saying, you don't think Iran would do the exact same thing to us? Except this time they're not going to drop conventional bombs from the sky. It's going to be a nuclear bomb. And it's going to be millions dead. So take them out now before they do a future nuclear Pearl Harbor. 617-266-6868. CJ in Boston. Thanks for holding, CJ, and welcome.
Just the first two things that need to be recognized when going to war is first you must recognize who your enemy is and their ability to carry on for a lengthy period of time. In both of those cases, Iran have checked those boxes. They have declared war on America since 1979, 47 years ago. They have threatened to dismantle and destruct our country. I don't know what more is needed to show that Iran is a direct threat to the United States of America. Jeff, as you know, I'm a former combat veteran, and I do not believe at 1,000% that there should be any American ground troops in Iran, and I don't believe that they're needed. I would hope that the president would take the following action. The oil is all pumped to Cog Island for storage. What you do is you sink that island and stop their ability from selling any oil. You secure the strait, and what the president has said in the past is very contradictory as to who is in control of the strait. Secondly, you mentioned GPS. GPS needs a source. What you do is you knock out those sources that are directing the GPS systems. You shut out the lights, which I believe is one of the most important things that Trump can do at this point. You have to think about what happens when people lose electricity. They lose their ability to fill their cars. They use their ability to fill their military equipment. When the lights go out would be the perfect opportunity for the Iranian people to go out into the streets and to overturn the mullahs. Jeff, Trump doesn't have much of a choice here. If he walks away from this, undoubtedly he will go down in American history as being the greatest or biggest presidential coward in American history. He cannot allow that to happen. And for some of your callers who are calling in like Pete, who voted for Trump 3 times, you know, he's one of the people more than likely to go to the polls, the midterms, and vote for the Democrats. You know, a lot of people forgot. It's a new generation now about September 11th and those planes that hit the Twin Towers in New York City. But for those of us who remember, recognize and note that the holes that they put in the ground on American soil, and to think that Americans now would allow this country to have a nuclear bomb and strike America is unconscionable. I would just say this to Trump. Do what you need to do to get the job done. You don't have to put troops on the ground. Tehran has 10 million people, the biggest city. Knock out the lights. There are 9 other major cities with over 1 million people. In those major cities, you knock out the lights. And then I think that this will come to a point that will drag them to the negotiating table. We cannot allow our country to be portrayed as cowards in this war. We cannot walk away and throw up the white flag against a country that has sworn to take out the United States of America. And I want to finally say this on behalf of all the American troops who are standing by, is thank you for your service. What Trump is doing by not allowing them to go in, and I recognize his concern about American casualties, but he has to recognize that these men and women in uniform who are on those destroyers and aircraft carriers and on those airfields waiting to take off, they have a sworn duty, and they were ready, willing, and able to defend this country when they took the oath. So I say, Jeff, just let the president do his job on behalf of the American people, because he cannot win here. If he puts boots on the ground, the Democrats are going to say, well, he got Americans killed. If he pulls out, they're going to say he was a coward, and they will never, ever let that go. And when he does that, should he do that, he is labeling the more than 77 million people who stood behind him as being labeled as cowards who backed the president, who is the biggest coward in American history. So I say, Mr. President, stand up, do your job. You don't need boots on the ground to take care of this country. Stop the oil, stop the food. 2022 report, 30% of the food that goes into Iran is imported. Stop the food. Do to Iran what we did to Cuba, and do it now. But take action as soon as possible.
In other words, finish it. Oh, I hear you, CJ. Finish it. Finish it. CJ, thank you for your service. Look, just so far, I'm looking at the Kuhner Country poll question of the day. Again, sponsored by Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. The question's asked, should President Trump send in U.S. ground troops to finish off the war in Iran, to beat the Iranian regime? And so far, it's basically 37% yes, 64% no. So the majority of Kuhner Country is with CJ. Not quite 2/3, but almost 2/3. Now that's MAGA. That's MAGA. 2/3 of MAGA doesn't want boots on the ground. So when you ask yourself, I'm just, relaying, what's obvious. You're saying, well, why is Trump so reluctant to put boots on the ground? I mean, if Kuhner Country is 2/3 to 1/3 against it, what do you think the Democrats? What do you think the libs? What do you think, so what do you think their position's going to be? That's why he's reluctant to put boots on the ground. Because he looks at something like this and says, my own people don't want me to put boots on the ground. They want me maybe to win the war, yes. And as CJ pointed out, there are many ways to win the war without having to put boots on the ground. But if you've been asking yourself, why won't he put ground forces? If his own base is not with him on this issue, what happens if there's casualties? He's going to bleed. He's going to hemorrhage support. So that's the pressure the president is feeling. CJ, thank you very, very much for that call. Very good call. Nick, how much time left, Mike? Okay. Hang on. We're going to take more of your calls. Don't touch that dial. Okay, my friends, let's check in with you. That's right. It's Monday, 9:50. It's Talk Back Tit for Tat, a chance for Kuhner Country to speak directly, thoughtful, funny, passionate. We've gathered your best messages, and they're coming up right now. Take it away, Mike.
The only question I have is when the space aliens come, will they have to show ID or not?
The EPA is petitioning to fine Senator Chuck Schumer for emitting greenhouse gases.
Cows have no idea what time it is.
Grace, it's time to change the clocks again. Ugh, I'm exhausted. I need a couple of Big Macs.
Stop repeating yourself several hundred friggin' times. You say it once, okay, I got it. You say it twice, oh, I got it locked in. You say it 4, 5, 6 times, I'm going to a different station.
All your callers are turning into what I call the armchair army. They all know everything. Oh, Trump should have this, Trump should have that. You're not the president. Jeez, for Pete's sakes.
Jeff, have you ever noticed every single blessed Wednesday when you do your newsmaker interview with your wife, Dr. Grace, that Mike always cuts her off and shuts her down before she can get her last in?
Jeff, I love you, and I know I took you away.
Now, Mike, what about all those calls you said were coming in saying Mike for president? How come you didn't put those in the montage, Mike? Are you being modest, Mike? Honestly, hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. If you want to be part of Kuhner's Talk Back Tit for Tat, and by the way, anything goes. You criticize me, praise me. If you're upset with me, you're happy with me, or Mike or Sandy, you just download the iHeartRadio app, click on the right-hand corner, and let her rip, baby. Okay, Mike, who do you want me to go to next, my friend? Harry in Maine. Thanks for holding, Harry, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, good morning.
Hi.
I want to just say this. CJ said it the best. I think he's caller of the week. I agree totally, 1,000,000% of what he said. I would add the following. What Maria Bartiromo raised as an issue is what you really need to ask. Think about it, Jeff. If we ever put military, or try to put boots on the ground on Carg Island, Iran will blow that place up. They'll implode the place. You won't know what hit you. It will be like fish in a barrel. There's no way we should even attempt to take Carg Island. We don't need that oil. Trump talks about Venezuelan oil and our own oil and gas and so forth. We don't need it. China needs it. India needs it. Europe needs it. Our focus needs to be on the following: keep the Strait of Hormuz open. That needs to be one of the primary focus, and continue with the blockade and starve the Iranians' economy. Second thing, take out their leadership. Take more out. Continue to take out their top leadership. Next guy steps out, take him out. Take him out. And the last point, CJ really emphasized, and I agree, focus on hitting the infrastructure that's used for dual use, for the military and for the citizenry. If it's just their citizens' use, don't hit it. But if it's dual use, hit it, and hit it hard. And that's what I would do. I just wait them out. I would not put boots on the ground. That would be a big mistake, trying to take over Carg Island. I said, Jeff, they'll booby-trap that place. They're waiting. They're trying to bait us to get on Carg Island, and they'll just hit us like fish in a barrel. That's my opinion.
Well, Harry, I can tell you this. Some, obviously, in the audience do want boots on the ground. But if you look at the polls so far, and it hasn't really moved much now, and I mean, we're getting more votes, but in terms of the percentage, it's pretty much been consistent. Roughly 36% want boots on the ground, 64% say no boots on the ground. That's almost 2/3. So, I think Trump knows that, and I think that's what's going to I think that's going to dissuade him. I mean, we'll see what his military people tell him. So I think you're right, Harry. I think he's going to go for maximum pressure, economic pressure, massive bombing, try to surgically remove the regime, and do it without putting American soldiers on Karg or any part of Iran.